But here I am not only seeing the direct impact, but I'm also seeing the impact from an educational perspective. I'm also seeing the impact from a gender perspective, and that is where I'm also trying to, like, point out about how my own understanding of the interlinkages between these issues became more and more deeper, courtesy just traveling and working in these spaces, and things I could never imagine.
Hi everyone, welcome to Now Boarding, a new travel podcast by me, Payal Nair. This show aims at creating awareness about ecotourism, sustainable tourism, responsible travel, and a lot more. We will cover stories and journeys of people who are ecotourism specialists and those who are leaders in their field. We will also be talking to people who have had unique travel experiences, remarkable conceptual places to stay, unexplored cultures, and ancient histories of various towns and cities around the world. Join me in this journey of knowing more about travel. Get inspired to see the world and discover your inner self. Hi everyone. Today I am in conversation with Keshav Gupta. Keshav is pretty dynamic. He's the founder of the Dais, which is it's a company that's focused globally on youth empowerment. And he is also the founder of the International Sustainable Development, which is an organization that's dedicated to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you so much for joining me today, Keshav.
It's an honor, Payal, and I'm quite excited by the melting pot and now onboarding all the initiatives you're taking. So it's an honor, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, I mean, I think there is so much that you have to share. I can see that there's a lot of work that you are doing, and there's a lot of good work that you're doing. So, before we sort of dive into that, just a very quick background on you. That's one. And two is, how did you actually get into doing what you're doing today?
Okay, that's a very hard question to begin with. So a little bit about myself. I've been born and brought up in Delhi in India, and I studied economics earlier on at Delhi University. Went on to a law school, spent a bit of time with law firms and the court systems. But to me, I think empowerment of people was very important because I was a very shy, scared child. I'd be very honest about it, and at some point I had a personal breakthrough where I turned from somebody who was very scared of talking to people to today talking to you, hopefully very comfortably. So that is what really inspired me to believe that if I can be helped, then it means that more people can be empowered and they have so much inside of them that can be unleashed with the right kind of ecosystem nurturing, and that's where we started. Like the Dais came into being in 2014, and since then we were in the education to begin with, soft skills for students, and while working with that, I realized that there's so much gap inside classrooms, not just between schools, and when especially when you go out to rural spaces, you see the deficiencies even further. So that really led us to enter into the sustainable development goals. So that while the Dias was being born, and in its our early years, the Sustainable Development Goal Agenda, the 2030 Agenda, was also being adopted in 2015. So we instantly, there was a natural alignment there, and that's how we really came into working on these issues. And for us, the focus areas that we picked up was gender equality, climate action, quality education, and with more work, we realized that as a team, as a collective, I'd also say that that you can't achieve one goal without the other in so many words. So that is what sort of promoted sort of my team and myself to sort of really work on much broader issues to try to get more stakeholders involved. And that's how we are here today. And yeah, so yeah,
Okay.
I hope that's a little bit of a relevant introduction, Payal.
No, it absolutely is. Okay, so now we can maybe go deeper into what the Dais does. So if you can just break it down, I mean, I've noticed that you have multiple pillars, and you've mentioned, that you are working on inclusion and climate action. But if you can just specifically for youth empowerment, what are some of the different pillars that you have and what you do within those? And then we can move on to talking about the SDG goals for 2030 and how you're aligned with that. But first, if you can just break down a little bit for my understanding as well as the understanding of the listeners and the viewers of what exactly does it mean in when you're talking about the dais and the different pillars that you are involved in, and you are kind of creating this environment for the youth.
Sure, sure. Thank you for the question. This also helps me sort of focus my thoughts in certain specific directions. So thanks a lot, Payal. Uh, so when we talk about youth empowerment, there's no magic pill that you can give one youth and they're empowered. I wish there was. Or for that matter, youth or any human being. I think it's a very wide personal journey. So the word the dais, as we see it, it means a platform, right, or a stage. So that's where the word is also coming from in terms of the empowerment aspect. It also means that a stage doesn't judge you for what you're saying or doesn't tell you what to say, but it tries to provide literally the dais to you to speak. And again, this goes back to, I think, when I was 14 years of age, and I met one of my seniors, and I was supposed to present a debate in school, and my legs would really tremble, no kidding, uh, at the thought of sort of even standing up on the stage. So this guy told me that, look, you go up to the dais, nobody can see your trembling legs behind the podium, and you have the speaker time, and you're physically and metaphorically raised above the audience. So that time is yours, and all you need to do is speak out. So the reason I'm mentioning that to you is because that also sort of forms a very core philosophy of where we come from. And not only that, but it also gives us a view of a flexible view rather than trying to implement one approach towards that we would like to implement. And I know that in many in traditional wisdom around businesses, they say focus on one product. What's the one niche area that you want to have, for which you want to be known, and so on. But when you're talking about youth empowerment, it's just not possible because every young person is different. In my experience working with uh, like students, young people from different parts of the world, I've experienced that they all have different perspectives, different challenges, and different ecosystems. So keeping all of that in mind, essentially, one of the core things that we work on is through directly workshops with young people. We look at their confidence issues. We look at how they're articulating their thoughts. We look at various creating various platforms, whether it is through youth conferences, youth-led awards.
Yeah, I mean, you're facilitating, but at the same time, you're also learning. It's
Absolutely.
yeah, it's always, I think there's no end to learning. And when you see and hear of different experiences, and I think this whole intercultural communication, I think, is very, very critical because it also helps you understand someone else's way of thinking. And you may not have had that perspective ever because that's not how you've grown up. So I think it's, yeah, no, it's interesting. I completely understand where you're coming from. And I totally get, I mean, even for me, every conversation that I have with my guests is a new learning for me because everyone's doing something so different, interesting. They're passionate about what they do, and there is some sort of, and I may not have known about certain things. So for me as well, it's a learning. So I can understand when you say that it's a constant learning for you as well. So
And I'll just give you one more example. So while working in India and other several parts of the world, I used to just presume certain privileges. And then I was in Afghanistan in 2018, and we were doing a model UN with these university and school students. So this girl walked up to me. She was a 14-year-old, 15-year-old again, grade 10. And she said that, sir, the homework that you had given to me, I am sorry I could not do it. So on the day two of the conference, so day one at the end, we had given them some research work to do. And I said, that's all right, but what happened? Why couldn't you do it? She said that Taliban blew out the power station of our area and we had no electricity the whole day. So I didn't have any way in which I could have done that. Now, all of a sudden, that was one of the most educating moments for me because I have read World Bank reports which talk about the correlation between the luminous the electricity availability and the bulbs on the street lights versus the impact of terrorism or crime in a region. But here I am not only seeing the direct impact, but I'm also seeing the impact from an educational perspective. I'm also seeing the impact from a gender perspective. And that is where I'm also trying to, like, point out about how my own understanding of the interlinkages between these issues became more and more deeper, courtesy just traveling and working in these spaces, and things I could never imagine. Usually a child would say, I had to go out for a party, or if you're in Singapore for instance, or I had to go somewhere else. Here there's a child telling me that terrorists blew up my power station in the locality, and in the next 5 days there's going to be no electricity. And so so it teaches you about, also sometimes we have these expectations and patronizing behaviors, that why is this country not progressing, or we are funding this country, and so on and so forth. So just very quickly, I was speaking at a seminar some time back, and very typically one of the professors asked me, she said, so what is the quantitative impact you have achieved? and i and I knew that she had never stepped out in a conflict zone to understand that that is not the parameter that you have to look at. The fact that something is happening and that people are starting a process of dialogue, sometimes you cannot quantify these milestones. And uh, and and again, like, for us, once we understand these things, we also want to evolve our own methodologies whenever we move ahead in any of these spaces. So the first thing is, you go to a region, you have to learn as much of the context, and that does not happen in books. That happens with knowing the people, talking to them, and asking, like, innocent and curious questions, right? So yeah, and half of the learning, honestly, I believe, for any workshop anybody does, is just how your facilitator is as a person. Because more than the content, anybody will only absorb limited amount of information. They'll probably forget it by the next week also.
how you engage, right?
How you share your own being with them.
Yeah.
So 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 we try to have that culture of mutual respect, flat hierarchies, everyone's opinions taken into consideration regardless of what whether they're called the interns or whether they're called associates or CEOs or whatever. I always tell my like even the young people who join us as interns that you are, please take a letter which says you're the CEO of the organization. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But while you work with us, you have to have a stake in the process. And that will only happen to the extent that you want it to happen. So there are very soft aspects of these soft skills, I believe, that are very crucial in creating impact in these spaces. Yes.
So I just wanted for you to, just give us a slightly more of an overview on what the sustainable development goals for what is the agenda for 2030. If you can just sort of highlight some of the issues that are being looked at and what is actually the end goal.
Right. Uh, so let me begin with a caveat that sustainable development goals is a roadmap towards a better world in a very broad way, but it's still very limited. There are more goals that we as a world have that are not encapsulated, that probably never made it to the agenda. There's always very pragmatic negotiations that have gone into this roadmap. But in 2015, for our listeners to create broader context on the Sustainable Development Goals, before 2015, we had the Millennium Development Goals, 8 goals which were taken up by the United Nations. To look at the basic necessities, whether it's water, availability of food, hygiene, these kind of concerns, inequalities, trying to address those, uh, to ensure that we have basic decent living, around the world. But obviously, these are, you can't achieve the goals. They are, because they are in process always, they are dynamic and they are ways of life, right? So it is, to me, it is about improving lives. So in 2015, the UN got together for a long time, prior to that, and they developed together what are these, what we also call as the people's goals, which are these 17 sustainable development goals. um, 8 of the Millennium Development Goals were added straight away into the Sustainable Development Goals as the first 8 goals. For whoever could see the screen behind me, those these colorful blocks is how they are represented. And when these goals were being developed in 2015, so obviously they have to call to answer to the concerns that are also coming up now. So whether it's climate change, and I don't know if I should say the word climate crisis here instead of climate change, uh, growing pollution even in the marine life, may not be climate change per se, but those microplastics are going into fish is going into our food chain, and we now have microplastics inside our bloodstreams. Decent living for all. We have seen rapid industrialization in developing part of the world in the past few years. So how do you create sustainable cities? Um, my favorite goal would be eventually quality education, which was also within sustainable development goal, within the Millennium Development Goals, which has also been recognized as really one of the key goals for achieving all other goals. So and then you have another really interesting aspect of the SDGs was the 17th goal that was taken up, which was partnership for the goals, because all the other goals that we see are uh, challenges or problems, so to say, that we need to achieve. But then this is an aspirational, like a recognition that partnerships themselves are also the goals, because nothing can be achieved without each other.
Yeah.
And to me, what attracted me the most possibly to the SDGs was the idea of leaving no one behind. Because if I go back to like what I said about why Dais came into being,
Yeah.
because I probably felt left behind in my classrooms when I couldn't really go out there and debate as effectively as somebody would, or make the right symposium, get selected in the school teams, and so on, whatever our main concerns are during the school days. So
Right.
to me, leaving no one behind really, and I think then again you can trace the philosophical aspects to the Gospels, where Jesus would say that I will never leave you, and so on, right? Or any philosophy which recognizes you and me as the same human beings deserving the same dignified life, an opportunity at a better future. So those are a little bit about the SDGs. For our listeners, SDGs is not just an agenda for the government to achieve. As I had mentioned, that they are people's goals. So one of the key things was that a lot of these SDGs were developed through several consultations at the basic grassroots level with people. The reason I'm saying people is to try to have the least amount of identities play into that, men, women,
Yeah.
racial, any of that. So that's again very important, and I want to take this opportunity of this amazing platform that you've created, Payal, to
Thank you.
also urge our listeners, to mobilize together, because SDGs can be a very vast agenda when you look at the entirety of this big world around us and its big issues, but it all starts from each of us, because we have constructed this world brick by brick, literally, and we have constructed the pollution aspect with every carbon emission. We have created the inequalities. We have manifested it from our minds to our behaviors, to our then social relations, uh, and we have created these borders. I mean, we were literally all together in the Gondwana land at some point before everything broke apart, and that was the nature's way.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we can't do better as human beings. So SDGs that way can be a very good uh, uniting tool, because a Samsung knows the SDGs as what they are, and somebody in Nigeria knows what the SDGs are, and that can create a common identity to me. I don't know if there's any scholarship on that yet, but to me, it can create a common identity to mobilize people for maybe the same cause. Maybe they will never meet each other in real life, but they can both work on a decent, equal life, or a better life for all. So,
The from how you kind of how the idea actually germinated to where you are today, I think it's phenomenal, and all the power to you. And I'm really really happy to have had this conversation, and also uh, used my platform to be able to share it to the rest of the world. So thank you very much, Keshav. I really really enjoyed and appreciated this conversation. It takes a lot of hard work and commitment by me and my team to bring these meaningful conversations to you week after week. If you're enjoying our podcasts, do write in reviews, follow and subscribe. It encourages us to continue with our mission of creating a community. I also have a very small request. There is another way of supporting. A one-time donation from you would greatly help. You can reach out on our Instagram pages, Podcast Melting Pot and nowboarding.podcast. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Now Boarding, a travel podcast. Check out other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. And of course, don't forget to share your thoughts with us. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes only on Now Boarding, a travel podcast.